Welcome to the Best Team Wins podcast with Adam Robinson. He's talking to today's industry leaders and entrepreneurs about the people side of their business.
Welcome to the Best Team Wins podcast, where we feature entrepreneurs and business leaders whose exceptional approach to the people side of their business has led to incredible results. My name is Adam Robinson, and for the next 25 minutes, I'll be your host as we explore how to build your business through better hiring. Today on the program, Adam Birnbaum, just joining Hireology as our general manager of our SMB unit, small mid-sized business unit. Before his new role here at Hireology, he was the chief operating officer of StickyAlbums, a B2B SaaS company which helps over 5,000 professional photographers market to and book new clients. Adam has extensive experience in building and managing remote teams, as well as hiring and recruiting, and is now in charge of a pretty big opportunity here at Hireology, and we are glad to have you here on the program. Welcome.
Thank you, Adam. I'm happy to be here.
So 2 Adams on the program, and we are here today to focus on the people side of what you do. But before we dive in, let's set the stage here. And so first, tell us a little bit about what StickyAlbums is, and some contours of the business. How many employees did you have, and what was your customer there, just to give us that perspective?
Sure. So StickyAlbums is a software as a service platform that helps professional photographers market their photography business. So for example, if you're a wedding photographer working with a bride and groom, at the end of the wedding, as part of your photography package, you could offer a custom mobile photo app with the best images from the wedding that the bride and groom could share with the friends and family. So the apps are actually white labeled by the photographer. So as the apps get shared by friends and family, the photographer's using it as a lead gen tool. So that's sort of some background on the company. In terms of the team that we had 9 people on our core team, plus an additional 5 people who helped out on a more intermittent basis, like legal, bookkeeping, tax, etc.
Got it. And what would you say influenced your decision to join Hireology, and talk a little bit about what we have you doing here?
Sure. So I really enjoyed my experience with StickyAlbums a lot. We built a fully remote team, and I think that after being there and doing that for 4 years, I was just craving some of that in-person interaction that you can try to mimic in a remote environment, but you can't really ever find the right substitute for. So it was with the realization that working remotely wasn't going to be the right fit for me long-term that I realized maybe I should start looking, and what better time to start looking than now. So when I was looking for my next role, I was focused on 3 main areas. One was culture. The second was a track record for growth and future growth potential. And the third was around a product that I believed in. And Hireology really hit the mark on all 3 of those. Moving into this general manager role was a really great opportunity to pull from some of the general management experience I had at StickyAlbums, working cross-functionally and understanding how to drive multiple functions within a business. Here at Hireology, where we really have a great platform that can do so much in the SMB space, and we already have, great traction here, of course. But I feel like at the same time, there's so much potential, so much untapped potential that we can continue to drive and move past. So that's really what I'm focused on here at Hireology.
Great, music to my ears. So let's talk about StickyAlbums, and you've mentioned already from the jump some of the challenges of building remote culture, and it really takes the right mindset and desire to be a part of that. So it was a small team, and you've told me previously that you didn't have an HR department. So if, for entrepreneurs and leaders listening who are building or aspire to build a remote workforce, what was your process? How do you hire when there's no central HR team and everyone's in a different place?
Yeah, so I think that, first of all, working remotely is great from the perspective of you're not limited to the city that you're in. You can recruit across the country. You can recruit outside of the country. So I think realizing that benefit and taking advantage of it is important. One job board in particular that we had really good results with is called We Work Remotely, which was started by Jason Fried and his team at Basecamp. So we, used that job board. But I think that the other thing that we ran into being a small team was, how do you effectively screen applicants? We posted a role for customer success that I think we had over 700 applications in the course of a week or week and a half.
Wow.
Yeah. And, as me and my partner are looking at each other and saying, well, what are we going to do now? How do we filter that down to one hire? So what we ended up doing was basically building out a funnel that's actually, in hindsight, somewhat similar to how we think about pre-screen surveys at Hireology. So we gave people a survey that we sent out through a tool called Typeform and asked them to respond to different questions around what their salary requirements were, and some other questions. We were able to screen people down that way. Secondly, from the people who successfully completed that step, we then had them do a video interview because working remotely, it's really important that people are comfortable being on camera. And so when I say interview, this was actually not a real-time interview. This was them hitting record on their webcam and responding to a couple of questions. A lot of people self-selected out of those first two steps, so that by the time we were able to actually spend our time actually doing interviews, there was a manageable pool of candidates, call it 20 to 30 people, that we then went through a first round and final round with.
All right. Well, so you built your own system. That's impressive. So what was the impetus for going remote in the first place?
It was really not anything that was deliberately decided. I had met my partner Nate in Minnesota, and there were already some remote contractors on the team at that point. And he was asking me to come on board to join him as COO. And I, at the time, was already making plans to move to Chicago. And so I said, this is a really exciting opportunity, but it almost seems like the right opportunity at the wrong time because I'm planning on moving. And I think we kind of talked about it and just decided this doesn't have to be a barrier for us working together. We, had that connection that you really look for in a partner in running a company, and just decided, like, let's not make this a barrier. Let's turn this into an advantage. And so we, had that base of contractors who we were working with remotely, and it just became a screen that we put on our future hiring to let's leverage the benefits of being remote.
That's great. What worked for you in terms of managing remote?
There were a couple of things that I think were important. The first was certainly our culture. Some of the areas that we focused on in our culture were things like empowerment, transparency, flexibility, authenticity, experimentation and learning. All of those aspects of culture are important when you're in person, but I would say even more important when you're remote, because you really are depending on people to be empowered to make decisions when they can't necessarily stop by your office or vice versa, to be transparent on when things aren't working, to be flexible in a remote context and how we communicate with each other, and to be, to have the integrity to be clocking the hours. So culture was a really big piece. Of course, towards the end of my time there, we started to implement EOS, which we do here at Hireology as well, which added an additional level of accountability that we leveraged, especially at the leadership level. And finally, it was around the tools. So things like Slack, Trello, Google Drive, Dropbox were all important for file management, project management, and communication. We also used a tool called Cloudly and another tool called Loom to share screenshots and short video descriptions of things when chatting back and forth on Slack wasn't good enough. And you kind of to substitute for being able to stop into somebody's office and walk them through something for a couple of minutes where you don't really want to jump on a call. Loom and Cloudly were pretty helpful for that.
Did you find that these substitutes for in-person made for more expeditious communication, or do you think it created overhead that slowed the process down?
I think that in the earlier part of my time at Sticky Albums, it was probably slowing things down. And, so we ended up on Slack. Initially, we were using Skype, and then Skype evolved to Google Hangouts, and then Google Hangouts evolved to Slack. And with Trello, we started with Basecamp, and there were other tools. So all of this was sort of an evolution to figure out what was working and what wasn't working. And I think an important part of our culture when you talk about learning and experimentation was our ability every quarter to take a step back and say, what's working, what's not working, let's rip out what's not working, and let's put something in new to try. Towards the end, we were getting really efficient with how we had conversations, how we were sharing information back and forth. And I would actually say it was an advantage for us because we were so focused and precise in how we had communication. And at the same time, when we weren't having that communication, people were able to dive into their work and not have those interruptions that you sometimes have in a in-person environment.
What were some things that didn't work well and that you found to be particularly challenging to address?
Yeah, so I think that some of the biggest challenges had to do with building that relationship. So as much as we got good at using Slack and Loom and some of these other tools, and even jumping on calls through the call feature that's built into Slack, there's still something that you miss by not being in person. And as good as we got with remote communication, every quarter I would hop on a plane and go to Minnesota and spend a couple of days, because the whole idea of getting in front of a whiteboard to work on your business instead of work in your business was something that always seemed to work better in person. We also were going to conferences every year, so we strategically had different people on the team attend those conferences, not just folks within marketing or customer success, but we had like our CTO attend, both to be able to interface with our customers, but also so that we could have that team experience of getting to interface with each other in person. So I think it all had to do with building those strong relationships, but we figured out some ways around it.
To what extent did core values or a shared operating philosophy impact positively your ability to pull this off?
Yeah. So I talked to some elements of the culture before in terms of empowerment and transparency and some of those other areas. But the overall overriding philosophy for how we communicated externally with our customers as well as internally with our team was this phrase, do more of what you love. And from a photographer perspective, as our customer, of course, there's the idea of being a creative, and being a photographer is more than just earning paycheck from your clients. A lot of it is about the creative aspect of bringing your art to life. But internally, the way that sort of translated was an importance and focus on making sure that people weren't just working on things that contributed to the growth of the company, but were also taking into account the things that they really enjoyed doing, and ideally looking for overlap between those two areas. And we were able to find many points of overlap, and that's where we really saw great engagement from the people on our team in terms of coming into work and really putting in their all and seeing a lot of productivity from them, as well as seeing great results for the company because there was that overlap.
Extracting out some of the management philosophy from that opportunity and applying it to this opportunity, if you're just approaching team management, forget about whether it's remote or not, what are some things philosophically you've come to learn about rewards and recognition, and then on the flip side, giving feedback? And how has this Sticky Albums experience influenced your ability to manage teams in that way?
Yeah, so there's a lot to your question there. So to try to peel back the onion there, first of all, just from a general relationship perspective, I think, not taking it for granted and recognizing when do you need to be proactive in building relationships with people? What are the processes that you can put in place to make sure that you're having that ongoing communication? For example, something that people do sometimes in companies is they'll put office hours on their calendar when people can meet. And what you sometimes see in those office hours, depending on the culture, and I'm speaking outside of Hireology across any company, is depending on the culture, sometimes people take advantage of those opportunities and sometimes people don't. And if they don't take advantage of it, it doesn't mean that they're not necessarily interested in having communication with somebody. It just means that it's not fitting into how they think about their day and how they organize their day. So I think it's really being deliberate in identifying what the opportunities are to build relationships and setting up the right processes. From the perspective of recognizing and rewarding employees, one thing that we did remotely was in Slack, we were very, not just deliberate, but we were, always looking for opportunities to recognize people and, at messaging everybody on the team to let people know about big wins. We, of course, in addition to all of the remote asynchronous communication that we had a bi-weekly meeting where we would have everybody on the phone. So we would use that as an opportunity to recognize people too. I think the way that translates to the position I have here at Hireology is, again, just that idea of understanding that to recognize people, it doesn't just happen. You have to be looking for the opportunities to recognize people, and you have to be looking for the right channels to recognize people so that they're being recognized both one-on-one as well as in front of their peers. And I think, at Hireology, we of course have the huddle. Within SMB, we've started doing a monthly meeting, which is a place to recognize people. And within our sales team and our customer success team, they have weekly meetings, which is even a third channel. So, seeing all those channels as opportunities to bring up those recognition opportunities.
And what do you think it takes to be a leader in today's environment? Both from a management of people standpoint, and then blending that with operating the business, right? You can't just be one or the other. How are you thinking about those two disciplines as you lead a team?
I think a lot of it goes back to the relationships and building those relationships, understanding what people are looking to get out of their role, what's going to help them be productive, and then translating that through on the management side to thinking about what a cadence is, an operational cadence is that you need to set up to be successful. I don't think you can parse out one or the other. I feel like at the end of the day, they're both very interrelated and connected with each other.
So what I'm hearing is understanding the motivations, drivers, the expectations of the individual, building that trust is prerequisite to task management.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have examples in your past where maybe you got the cart before the horse there, or, where you're asking a lot of people and perhaps they're questioning your intention or motivation to do that, where you found that out maybe after the fact?
Yeah, I think that we sort of worked to build to the right cadence of a quarterly meeting for the team at StickyAlbums. And I wouldn't say that we ever had the issue where we put the cart before the horse and had big issues across the team. Because we were a small team, we were able to catch that feedback loop and sort of on the fly say, there's a broader team update that we think we need to do now to address people's questions and help them map their individual roles into what we were doing across the company. So there weren't really any big misses, but I will say that what we got good at was anticipating ahead of time when the opportunities were going to be for us to roll out broader updates to the team. And really what ended up happening, the cadence that we ended up moving into was, I would fly to Minneapolis. We would get on a whiteboard, think about where we headed to next, have a chance to digest that, build a plan around that, and then update the team on what the outcome of that conversation had been.
What would you tell a new manager, based on your experience, new manager managing a team for the first time, what would you tell them is the most important thing they need to think about as it relates to managing people? Particular philosophy or guiding principle?
For me, my big philosophy is around integrity. I think that if you can be honest with other people about what you know and what you don't know and where the gaps are and how they can help and what they need to do to be successful in their role, I think having integrity with them as well as having integrity with yourself and being willing to think about where your strengths are, where your opportunities for development and improvement are, being open to, building a network, whether it's internally within your company or externally outside of your company with a group of a network of people who you feel comfortable batting ideas around with and identifying challenges that you're facing and kind of getting that feedback. I think having that feedback loop externally is also really important.
And I'm going to put you on the spot here.
Okay.
Based on your short time here, right? So let's call it 60 days ish. What's one thing you think we can do differently in the organization you're leading to better improve communication or transparency here at Hireology?
Yeah, you are putting me on the spot, all right. I think that the biggest opportunity has to do with the structural change that happened when I was hired. I came into a new role. We didn't really talk about that, but there was no general manager of SMB before. And in putting that role in place, what really ended up happening was this additional tie between the SMB sales team and SMB customer success team was put in place because now both of those teams are reporting up into one person. And so I think that the opportunity there is to leverage that organizational structure and be able to say, based on where we're at, how can we even better tie together and build on the relationship that our sales and customer success teams have already, and sort of take that to the next level from a collaborative perspective and ultimately from a customer experience perspective.
Okay. Yeah, you get good. Well done.
Okay,
Well done.
great.
That's great. Is there a particular book that is on your nightstand right now that related to leadership or business, or one that you recently read that you could recommend to our audience?
Yeah, so this is specific to people who are taking on a new leadership role like I was. I picked up a book called The First 90 Days by Michael Watkins. He's a co-founder of a group called Genesis Advisors, which is a leadership development consultancy. And what I felt like that book did was it really broke down a lot of the aspects that I've had to deal with coming on board, everything from thinking about building that support network internally and externally, thinking about where to focus first, the concept of early wins. How do you get traction within an organization where you're an unknown and you're trying to build credibility, and ultimately getting into thinking about some of the decisions that you make as a new leader, where you're assessing, what's working, what's not working. For the things that's working, how can we drive that opportunity? And for the things that aren't working, what is the best way to navigate making the decisions that you need to make and ultimately making the changes that you need to make to address some of those issues.
Final question here. If you were to come back on the show in a year and tell us whether or not you were able to accomplish what you feel today is the most important thing, people-related issue or opportunity on your plate, what would you be telling us got done?
It's hiring. So right now we are aggressively building out our SMB team. And it's hiring to get people on the team so that we can sell to the demand that's there.
All right. That is the final word. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been learning from Adam Birnbaum, former Chief Operating Officer of StickyAlbums, and now current General Manager here at Hireology. Adam, thank you for being with us on the program today.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
That is a wrap for this week's episode of the Best Team Wins podcast, where we're featuring entrepreneurs and business leaders whose exceptional approach to the people side of their business has led to incredible results. My name is Adam Robinson, author of the book, The Best Team Wins, which you can find online at www.thebestteamwins.com. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you here next week.
Thanks for listening to the Best Team Wins podcast with Adam Robinson. You can find out more information about Adam and his book, The Best Team Wins, Building Your Business Through Predictive Hiring, at thebestteamwins.com. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next week.